God on the Move.
Reza attends a youth underground group. They share scriptures, pray together, and support one another. We are invisible to society, but we are never alone, he says. Our faith grows because we rely on each other and on God.
Iran is a historic Persian nation and the world's largest Shia Muslim majority country. While historic Armenian and Assyrian Christian communities remain, converts from Islam often face severe restrictions and persecution. Despite this, Iran is widely believed to have one of the world's fastest growing underground church movements, as many people are discovering the Christian faith. Iran is both one of the hardest places to follow Jesus openly and one of the most remarkable places of church growth today. Their stories are marked by courage and faithfulness, but their voices are seldom heard. You are listening to the God on the Move podcast. This Lausanne movement production is part of a wider initiative dedicated to sharing testimonies of God's work across the world for every believer. And this is a story about the untold stories of Christians in Iran. The voice you heard earlier is Ashkan. He's a servant of Christ, and this is his story.
So I'm Ashkan, and I was born as Muslim, but also from the beginning, my family, they were not so radical. First, my uncle believed to Christ. So my uncle had an underground church group, and they were worshiping and praying together every couple days in the week. So like underground church. And after that, my father came to Christ. And so after my father, me and my mom, we came to Christ. It took little time because first we didn't believe and other things, but because we saw the miracle, what happened to my father, because he had a heart attack and had to do the operation. And first they took some veins from the foot and then it didn't work. And after that they said he needs to do the operation, and doctor said more than 90% he cannot pass this operation, so he will die in the operation. But after that, so everything was good and all the nurses and doctors were shocked. But before the operation, one of the pastors came to the hospital and prayed for him and my uncle. And also my father was very confident and he was listening to worship musics and praising God even before the operation. And so after that, we became shocked. And so after that, we believed, me and my mom too. First, my family believed to Christ, and that time we were in Iran. So after that, we had to leave the country. So it was not easy. That's why we left the country and came to another country. So after that, when we came to another country, we found out Iranian churches. And so we were attending one Iranian church. So it was also international church. And we had Bible studies and learned. And also we were serving at the same time with different things. So about 1 year and a half we were there. And after that, my father again had the operation and heart attack again. But that time he passed away and me and my mom were alone. And so it was a difficult time because no family, friends or relative there. So we had to just have comfort in other country with other things and feeling like emotionally far away from society. It's very, very difficult feeling. I can say after my father passed away, it was very difficult time for me and my mom. But also Bible says that when the hardship or difficulties comes to us, so it change our character. So I can say I received new character. I received more strength and comfort from God, even though no families and friends there, but I felt one inner comfort from God because even in the hard times, we still hold to the faith to Jesus Christ, and we were praying with my mom and attending the church and praising God. Yeah, it was a difficult time, but I can say it gave a strength to my character and gave also the hope because I know my father didn't die forever. It's because of Jesus Christ. So when we die, there is an eternal life that we have it. So there is always hope, and there is a hope and love and grace that God gave to us. It was hard situation, but there is hope, and I received more patience and hope. So when I gave my heart to Jesus, that time I felt freedom from the sadness and from some boundaries. So I felt freedom, freshness, and happiness after giving my heart to Jesus. But also in other side, I was feeling not good because of the society and pressures. So first I felt freedom, happiness and light. And after that I was growing in faith, so I learned other things, and I think I can say my faith growth after a couple of years, slowly. But still I should learn more.
I'm sure you can tell that Ashkan is an incredibly kind and lovely young man who has experienced more than anyone ever should. For the safety of those mentioned throughout this episode, names have been changed and some details like country locations cannot be mentioned. I was so moved by his story and by the heavy burden he's feeling to amplify the voices of his fellow brothers and sisters in Iran. I had a conversation with Ashkan prior to this one, and one thing that really stood out to me was the hope he had despite the bleak situation in Iran. So let's begin with the brief introduction about the Iranian Church and hear what gives him hope.
What I know and what I'm seeing in the information about the church in Iran, so it's growing very fast. It's growing very fast, and lots of people coming to Christianity in Iran. I don't know exactly, but I think some resources they say 800 to 1,300,000 Christians in Iran right now. But I think it's very difficult to be Christian in Iran. Yeah, when you are Christian, you cannot easily go to the church or you cannot worship God. That's why there are the underground churches, and people hiddenly gather together and read their Bibles or praise God together. And but it's very difficult, and that's why I wanted to share their voice, because Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12:26 that when one part suffers, every part of body suffers with it. So we cannot be silenced while one part of the body is wounded and suffering. So it was also my wish and my heart of sharing this book, because many people in outside of Iran, they don't know about what is happening in Iran for Christian, or even they think all of people are Muslim in Iran, or women wear hijab or something, but it's not like that. Also, there are some women in Iran that they leading the underground church, and they are encouraging and giving hope to other women. They have group and praise God and worship God together underground. I use two real stories, but just I changed the names. So one is Sarah, 30 years old, from Tehran, capital of Iran. Sarah, a single woman, secretly hosted a woman's Bible study in her apartment. We cannot meet openly, but these gatherings are our sanctuary. She says, despite the risk, she continued encouraging others to remain faithful and hopeful. So it's one of the stories. Another one also I can share with you. Mariam, 35 years old, from Isfahan. Mariam, a mother of two, lost her teaching job after authorities learned of her faith. She now educates children in secret, combining her calling with her devotion. Every challenge strengthens my faith, she reflects, and I see God working even when no one else notices. One thing that I see always when there is a limitation and a restriction, it causes that people come to Christianity more, because in Iran it's dangerous. Or when people want to come to Christianity, there is restrictions and very difficult. So that's why many people are interested, because of this limitation. So I think it's one of the reasons that most of Iranian believers come to Christianity. It can be one of the reasons, because in some countries there is freedom, they can choose any religion or any different things, but in Iran, because there is no freedom, that's why people go to find out what is Christianity. So it caused curiosity, and I think it's one of the reasons that Christianity in Iran is growing very fast. I think it's one of the reasons. Also, another reason is because in Islam, when they see the things happening like persecutions or jail or different things, so people got tired of these things. So that's why they don't have any desire to follow Islam. So that's why they look for another religion or another way. And so it's also another reason.
We will hear much more about the book Ashkan mentioned and read from in a minute. But before we get there, let's go back to his own story. What happened after his family converted to Christianity?
We had to leave the country, we had to leave Iran, because it was not so easy and it was some problems. So we left Iran, and so I was living in another country couple years, and we were worshiping God and joining the Iranian and International Church. And so we were worshipping and praising God all together with Iranians or in other brothers and sisters from other countries. And then finally I moved to Germany. When I left Iran, I was 17 years old. I'm now 25. It was also another reason that I wrote this book, because I experienced all this, I can say most of or half of this thing that I wrote in the book. So I experienced this kind of things like emotional pressure or denying or rejection from friends or family, or if you are like a student and like in the class, you cannot say I'm Christian, because if you say, then maybe you will lose all of the classmates, like the friends, and it's not so easy. And also it's not so safe to say, because it can be dangerous and for you and also for the parents. And that was one of the things that I mentioned in the book also, like discrimination in the school or in university or different things. And one thing, it was like a emotional pressure, like taking distance from society and leaving country. So leaving the relatives, family, and first years is feeling something like a very lonely and distance of society, friends, family. And you come to new atmosphere, new culture, new country. You need to learn new language, and there are always some pressures, because sometimes you feel you don't belong to this country, or some identity issues that I mentioned also in the book, because what we believe should be freedom, because it's part of our identity. And so we need to just dealing with all of these rejections and denials and find another way and choose another option, but not by choice, but by force. And that's not so easy. And if you then come to another country, and then if you lose one of your parents, and then there is mourning or feeling sad, but you cannot share with the family, because family in Iran, and they cut the relationship with you, and so no friend, no relative, no friends to share the emotions in this hard time, like when you lost one father or mother, and to deal with all of things like alone and go alone with all of these hardships. It's not so easy.
Before we continue with the story, I want to let you know that you can now join the God on the Move community on the Lausanne Action Hub. Be part of the conversation, see exclusive content, and share your own testimony. You can find the link to join the community in the podcast description. Also, if you have a story to share or know someone who might have, please contact us at podcast@lausanne.org. That is podcast@lausanne.org.
Before I was working as a web designer, like I learned by myself, and I had some online courses. And after I started by myself making some websites, but I felt like it is not for me. Working with computer is not so. I like working with people, helping people. That's why I chose nursing. And then I learned German, and then I started the Ausbildung here, vocation training. Here I feel good because I can freely go to the church and there's freedom. Also, I feel thankful because of this situation, because in Europe or some other countries there's freedom and they can go easily to church or change their religion. But in Iran it's very difficult, and I really feel what this persecuted church go through, like Iran or Nigeria or other countries. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity that I can go easily to the church.
In case you missed it, Ashkan is now in safety in Germany and training to be a nurse. But beyond that, he has been feeling a holy burden to share and amplify the voices of Iranian Christians. So, of course, I had to ask him about that.
I'm author of the book Faith Sacrifice. I just published this book at Amazon, and I just wrote this book because I wanted to share voice of Iranian Christians, because in some countries like Iran or some other countries it's not easy to be Christian, and so when you come to Christ, then always there are some consequences and difficulties and hardships. So it was in my heart that I write this book, because I saw that I can share their voice with the global church and the people of world, because many people, they don't know about Christianity in Iran and how people come to Christ and what they go through after coming to Christ and different topics. So I wrote this book. The book name is Faith Sacrifice, A Voice for the Voiceless, Untold Stories of Christians in Iran. This book, it has about 26 chapters, and I wanted to tell what will happen to them or what they go through. Like, I can tell name of some chapters. One chapter is Living in Secret, and another one is Rejection and Denial from Family and Society, Family Breakdown under Religious Pressure, or Loss and Sacrifice, Women of Faith, Youth and Converts. It's about 26 chapters, and every chapter has about 2 or 3 testimonies, but they are real stories of the real people. But just because of their security, I changed the name. But the stories are the story that they lived. And some of them I use from the open door sources. But some of these people directly they told me, and so I mentioned their stories in this book. I think it's a couple of points that caused me to write a book. So I can say one of them, it was my story, because what I felt after what happened to my family and leaving country and losing the father and going through after all this thing happened and still holding to faith and go this journey with the faith, continuing the journey with the faith. And it was one of the thing. Also another thing, because everywhere I go, many people ask me how is Christianity in Iran, because they want to know what is happening in Iran, and not many resources or information about that. So they cannot find the true information. It's not easy. And so another thing was I wanted to share their voice. So it was a couple of things, because also when you search in Amazon or other bookstores, not many books are written about Christianity in Iran. So when you search in Amazon, like when you write Christianity in Iran, and just maybe 10 or 12 books totally. And also most of these books are just explaining about a specific topic. What happened to this author, or some extraordinary life, or some heroic life. But I said, so this book and these stories should be reached to the world, because they are very important, because what they go through, emotional pressure, like discrimination in a school and losing job. Like one of people that I know, he lost his job just because of his faith to Christ. Or some people got divorced because the family of one of the partners was pressuring to get divorced because the faith of the spouse was another. So it's painful also. It's not very easy to write these stories and share. But I felt that world needs to listen to these stories and to listen to their voices, what persecutions or underground churches, what happens there, or different things like faith without recognition and loss of citizenship and legal identity. Some people are forced to leave Iran, and so they come to another country, and then they should wait for the asylum seeker process. And in some countries, it's very difficult, and some countries they don't give even. So they cannot come back Iran, and they cannot stay in the second country. So these situations are difficult. And so the other chapter is what the world often misunderstands. People think the Iranian Christians are under persecution, like they are in the jail. But it's not like that. It's not heroic. Every day they are under persecution. Like when you are in the society, go to the school, and you feel distance from other classmates. So every day you are in this atmosphere, in these situations. Or when you lose your job, emotionally you got abandoned by friends, so friends don't want to continue the relationship with you because of just your faith. This emotional pressure, it's not easy to handle it. So I felt it's very important to share these stories.
The bridging part I'm about to say now is probably completely unnecessary, because my next question is just so obvious. What followed was actually a much longer conversation, but I really wanted to honor Ashkan's calling and the testimonies of so many brothers and sisters that I decided to cut it all together in one piece. It might be worth pausing after each short story to really digest it and pray for each person and people like them.
I don't have a special favorite story, because all of the stories, when I was writing them, I was feeling the pain, but I think all of them are important. Like chapter 16, Children of Converts, Growing Up Between Words. So I can share one story of this chapter. Hannah was 8 years old when her parents left Iran. She remembers the fear of leaving at night and the long trip across borders. The hardest part, she says, was losing my cousins. We were like sisters. In Germany, Hannah learned the language quickly but felt caught between cultures. Persian at home, European outside. It is like having two worlds inside, she says. Both are part of me, but they don't always fit together. Her youth group at the local church helped her find identity and stability. So it's one of the stories. I can read this testimony. Chapter 13, Life in Exile, Loss, Loneliness, and Faith Abroad. Nadia and her husband left Iran after pressures at work and questions from neighbors about their house church involvement. They arrived in Germany with hopes of starting over. But only 9 months after arrival, Nadia's husband passed away suddenly due to a health condition. In Iran, grief is shared among extended family, neighbors, and longtime friends. But in Germany, Nadia stood alone in a country where she barely spoke the language, with no relatives to comfort her. I couldn't tell my mother in Iran how lonely I felt, she says. I didn't want to scare her, so I cried alone at night. The silence felt heavier than the grief. A local church helped her navigate basic needs, transportation, and emotional support. Members brought meals, prayed with her, and encouraged her to attend services regularly. Nadia says the church became her only family. In Iran, my faith was hidden. Here, my faith saved me. So it was one of the stories that touched my heart. I would like to share about the underground church. One of the testimonies is Reza, 28 years old from Tehran. Reza attends a youth underground group. They share scriptures, pray together, and support one another. We are invisible to society, but we are never alone, he says. Our faith grows because we rely on each other and on God. And also Leila from Isfahan, 35. Leila hosts a small women's group that moves from home to home. We cannot meet openly, but our faith is alive. She explains. Every meeting strengthens us even when the world does not see it. So it was about underground church and about the discrimination in a school. I can say about the testimony of Sarah, 22 years old from Isfahan. Sarah converted to Christianity during university. Soon she noticed professors giving lower grades and classmates avoiding group work. I felt invisible, she recalls, but I knew that my faith was more important than acceptance. I learned to trust God over people. I can read one about what the world often misunderstands. Kamran, 42 years old, yes. People think our lives are dramatic every day. Most days are ordinary. The difficulty is constant, not dramatic. And another one, Lale, 27 years old from Tehran. Faith is not about being seen, it's about living honestly when no one is watching. And another one, short story is Parviz, 50 years old, former professional. Outside Iran, people ask about persecution. Inside Iran, we learn about patience.
As always, there is so much more to say, more to Ashkan's story and faith journey, so much more about the growing underground church in Iran, especially in these turbulent times. So much more to say about the Iranian diaspora and how thousands upon thousands are coming to faith and new life in Jesus. And of course, endless stories to share of those whose voices we far too seldom hear. By the way, Ashkan's book is linked in the podcast description. But now, to wrap it up, I asked Ashkan to share something that's on his heart, and then prayer requests, so we can intercede more intentionally.
What I want from the world and global church is listen to the Iranian Christians and show them compassion and deeply pray for them and stand by them. And I'm so grateful for every prayer for Iran because it's a difficult situation. There are different type of dimensions of hardship, emotional, society, or denying from family, friends, relatives, and exile, persecution, and different things. And still they hold to their faith. So it gives me lots of hope and it gives me a strength also to keep my faith. as I experience the hardship, but their hardship also gives me the strength. And I hope also these stories give more faith to other believers all over the world, and to be strong in the faith and have hope in Jesus Christ, our Savior. And so the thing that I really want people to do for Iran is just pray for Iran. Just pray for their freedom and to have the church, like openly go to the church, not just hiddenly or underground churches, to speak what they believe, as any other religion in other part of the world can talk their identity, their belief, their faith. It's very important, and to show compassion to these people, not discrimination. They need this compassion because they had seen different type of difficulties and hardships after coming to Christ, their real stories, and different dimensions of they go through, like after coming to Christ, and still they kept their faith. And that gives me lots of hope, even though the stories are not, they are little sad stories, but it gives hope as well. So I really want the global church to pray for Iran and stay with Iran.
You have listened to the God on the Move podcast, which is part of the Lausanne movement's wider God on the Move initiative, where we want to share inspiring God stories from the global church with the global church. Through listening to what God is doing all around the world, we hope to encourage and challenge the global church to faithful obedience to the Great Commission. So let's accelerate global mission together toward a vision for the gospel for every person, disciple-making churches for every people and place, Christ-like leaders in every church and sector, and kingdom impact in every sphere of society. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow us for more.